Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great? Good. We are back with another collection of monstrosities from the worlds of sportered and bubba'd. This is the 10th edition of the Redneck Preppy Rages at bubba'd. And at this point, this is beginning to feel like one of those 1980s horror franchises with no end of sequels in sight. Well, let's not put this off any longer than we have to. Let's get into it.
We have such sights to show you.
Okay, I will admit that this probably doesn't rise, or perhaps more accurately, fall, to the level of Bubba, since there are plenty of AKs out there with thumbhole stocks and just awful wood overall. But I thought this needed inclusion, if only for that Bubba magazine. I actually wonder if it's just cosmetic, and I am using that term very advisedly, or if it's actually functional. If it's the latter, I'm actually kind of impressed, because getting magazine geometry and springs to work reliably, assuming that's occurring, is pretty difficult. It still looks dumb as hell, though. Extendo AK mags should never be a thing. You know, when I saw this one, my heart broke. World War II era Carnet AKs are not getting cheaper. Hell, even Russian capture sewer pipes are getting expensive. So seeing this Bubba job to force a scope on a genuine Waffenamt marked Kar 98K is enough to make me cry. If you want a hunting rifle, just go out and buy a damned hunting rifle. You can buy a decent new one or a very nice used one for less than what a clean car runs these days. It's so horrific that I almost forgot that how high the scope is compared to the bore. What now, a neck weld hold? I hate people. I suspect that this is one of those look what I can do jobs, so I'm not particularly outraged by this. That said, I do wonder at the mind that decided to put on a stock and scope on a pistol was a good idea, and then doubled down and put some fat neckbeard's reproduction katana at the end of a fake can. For the money that someone spent assembling this, they could have bought, well, anything that, wouldn't have opened them up to deserved ridicule. For some reason, I get the feeling that whoever owns this has a waifu body pillow that they sleep with. Well, you know what, we've all heard the saying that a firearm is just a different kind of tool, but this is a first for me. I have to admire the restraint shown by the creator of this pistol. No, not because the paint job is actually well done, but by the fact that they did this with a high-point pistol and didn't use a snap-on paint scheme. That said, DeWalt may not be in the Olympian heights that Snap-on resides in, at least in terms of price, but I think painting this in a Harbor Freight house brand's colors probably would have been more appropriate for something made by High Point. Still, I have to admit that it was a pretty good job. It's still stupid, but it does look well done. Why yes, this is exactly what you think it is. It's a bull-pupped lever-action rifle that's been tacticooled up and also modified with a belt feed mechanism. I get the, air quotes, I did it because I could ethos of experimentation. I also get that not everything needs to be practical. I just don't get the point of this because it's so impractical. You're probably having to reset your sight picture after every working of the action, which, by the way, seems very constrained because of how close that vertical foregrip is to the lever, and I don't see the point of belt feeding any rifle that doesn't rock and roll. I suppose, however, that if anyone ever created a tactical cowboy shooting competition, the owner of this thing would be the first and probably only person in line to sign up. Have you always been jealous of the penis front grip that a lot of AKs seem to be sporting these days? Well, now's your chance to have one for your AR-15. I'm not sure what happened to this rifle during its history. That optic screams of a once horrible desert paint job. But even common as potato chips ARs deserve better than this. Jesus, I wouldn't even do this to a PSA AR-15. Bonus points to those of you who notice that the front sight probably blocks a good portion of the optic. Why do I get the feeling that this was one of the few real rifles, as in not airsoft, that those Antifa supporters armed themselves with during the riots to try and prove how serious they were? Probably because of the penis grip. So I had to include this one because I laughed out loud when I saw this. A perfect storm of bad decisions. Bushnell TRS-25 on top of a UTG mount on a mini revolver probably chambered in .22 long rifle. Again, this is probably just a joke build, but in the world that we live in today, I would not be shocked if someone was actually carrying this as a pocket pistol. Probably in Florida. You know, we've had some fake PS90s in recent episodes, and believe me, if you haven't seen them, you have to watch some of the more recent Bubba Gun videos to bear witness to those atrocities. And I figured it was time to look at someone's attempt to prettify a real one. Now, I said earlier that katana handgun thing was owned by someone who, sleeps with an anime body pillow. Well, this one is owned by someone who probably sleeps with their anime body pillow, if you get what I mean. What's more disturbing than having cartoon images of what appears to be prepubescent girls all over your rifle is having what appears to be cartoon images of prepubescent girls in pornographic aftermaths on your rifle. Trust me when I say you don't want to look too closely, either at the rifle or its owner if you ever meet him. And I have no doubt that it's a him. You ever wanted to abrez your Mosin-Nagant M9130? What, did you think we'd go an episode without an M9130 in it, but still want to maximize that bullet speed? Apparently the owner of this butchered rifle did, and proceeded to make his dreams come true. Must be fun holding this when you shoot it. The recoil is fantastic, and after a few rounds, the flesh of your hand will be stuck to the barrel thanks to heat. It's probably safe to shoot. I mean, the receiver looks intact, but it's one of those things that just looks unsafe to shoot, whether it's handgun or rifle. Now, here's a guy who also wanted a bayonet on his handgun, but he decided to go old school and understated. Well, that or he just found the first bayonet he could afford in a surplus store and slapped it on that pick rail attachment. I have to admit I'm actually disappointed by the lack of effort here. It's not grotesque enough to make me angry, nor is it ambitious enough to make it distinctive. It's like someone had some parts in a handgun and decided to slap it together while reading r/guns on Reddit. It's the Bubba equivalent of eating untoasted white bread while drinking a glass of room temperature water. Do better. Or worse. I think. If you thought that obrezed Mosin was bad, this one is so awful I actually want to take a shower. I'm not sure where to start. The screwed-in bolt in place of a bolt handle. You got that weird replacement for the missing safety decocker. What passes for a weld job for the, air quotes, scope mount. The hose clamps. This is straight up nightmare fuel. This is Bubba-ing at its finest, and I think you know what I actually mean by that word. This is the equivalent of a hooker you find by an underpass. Remember that hotel room you once stayed at where you were convinced the bed wasn't clean? This is that rifle. And this is just the 8 or 9 inches of it we can see. I can only imagine what the rest of it looks like. Actually, I think I'd rather not. Yeah, it's another painted handgun, but it's not the same handgun. There's a concept in comedy called parallel thinking, where two comedians can think up the same joke at around the same time without actually stealing from each other. Well, the same thing apparently happens in the gun world. This time, however, it's a Glock, the tool watch of handguns. I suppose this one is more appropriate, but I do have one question. You have an Austrian handgun. Why not paint it in the colors of Bosch? Yeah, I know Bosch is German, but I doubt anyone outside of Austria has heard of Putz Estrich, Fassenden und Handels. Anyway, it's lame. What the hell is it with the orgasming anime girl paint jobs on rifles? This time on a damned M1 Garand, probably the least appropriate rifle you should be slapping Japanese anime on. Then again, I suppose that was the point, right? Some damn millennial thought it would be hilarious to do this. and then either spent a lot of money or a lot of time to get it done. See that roll of toilet paper on the top right? That's what this rifle reminds me of. If there's a God, someone else will eventually own this and restore this lady back to what she should be. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It's familiar, but I can't place it. Well, this is an SKS-45 in tactical furniture. You know, out of all the molested SKSs, I have to admit this is probably the least offensive one I've seen to date. That said, with the prices of SKSs rising so quickly in recent years, this is one of those jobs that you're going to regret doing. This isn't just another bubba'd SKS. No, this is one of the most rarest SKS-45s in the world, and I'm saying that without any hyperbole. It's not an Albanian model. No, I know that's what you're thinking. No, this is a genuine, made in North Korea SKS-45. These things are so rare outside of that communist hellhole that I can't even imagine what its value is. And someone decided that owning such a unicorn wasn't enough, that they'd graft a buttstock, pistol grip, and stock on it. And they didn't even do it well, because if you're going to ruin something with this value, this rarity, at least do it with skill. Recognize what an atrocity you're committing by paying it the respect to screw it up properly. My only hope is that the damage isn't great enough that original wood furniture you see here can be put back on. Okay, folks, we got a special one. Usually I only do 15 firearms per episode, but I thought I'd share a bonus one with you. And this one may be the worst ever. I have a great fondness for the M1941 Johnson rifle, mostly because I can't find or afford one. I do have a collector acquaintance up here in northern Canada who owns one, and it's the closest I've ever been to one. Not a lot of them were made in the grand scheme of things, so each one of these things is actually special. Folks, prepare yourself for what you're about to see, because things are about to get more horrible than you can imagine, and I am so sorry to do this to you. Feast your eyes. Yeah, that's a Johnson. Or was a Johnson. And this is one where I truly don't know where to begin. You have the aftermarket stock, which to be honest I didn't even know existed for Johnson rifles, but here we are, with a paint scheme that I'm not even sure what to call. The buttstock that makes it a pleasure to shoot full power rounds, I'm sure. And finally, the front and rear sights from an M16 rifle grafted onto it. Oh, and you can't see it, but the rifle was also rechambered. Instead of its glorious 30-06 round, this thing is now chambered in 338-06. I had to actually look up that round because I had never heard of it before, but apparently, and obviously, it's based on the 30-06 cartridge, dates back to the 1950s, and allows you to fire heavier bullets, like up to 250 grains heavy, for big game. Now, do you honestly believe that this atrocity is used for big game? I don't know if this is worse than that North Korean SKS. I mean, there are more Johnson rifles floating around than Nork rifles. But this one may be the entry that finally ends the Redneck Preppy Rages at Bubba Guns series. While I'm writing this script, I'm actually struggling what to compare this to. That time, the lady, air quotes, restored that fresco of Jesus Christ in an Italian church that made the news a couple years ago. This is the one that may have broken me. Goodness, it was hard to tell which one of those was the worst. Probably either of the last two. That said, you could probably make a good case, and good being in big air quotes, for any one of them. Why people do these sorts of things to perfectly good firearms, even that high point, is beyond me. But this video is proof that there are people out there with, I don't know, let's say unique tastes. And by unique, I mean horrible. I'm not sure I should say this, but I hope you found the video to at least be somewhat entertaining. At any rate, please don't bubba or sporter your perfectly good firearms, especially those with a historical nature. As always, I hope you have a great day. Take care, and bye-bye.